Good? All right. All right, I'd like to call this February 28th, 2022 Sylvania Board of Education meeting to order. Call the roll.
Mr. Feller.
Here.
Mrs. Huffman. Here. Mrs. Conklin.
Here.
Mrs. Lavalette.
Here.
Mrs. Johnson.
Here.
And please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get started here, the board would like to just have a moment of silence for Kevin Elikanich. He was a custodian at Southview that passed away a couple weeks ago, so we'll have a moment of silence. All right, thank you. Dr. Motley, with you.
Thank you, Mr. Feller. Good evening, everyone. Hard to believe that today is the last day of February. Tomorrow is the first day of March, and we are quickly entering into our fourth quarter here in about 3 or 4 weeks. So we are in our final approach of the school year, but nevertheless, so many things are going on throughout this school year, especially over the last couple of weeks. Just to share a little bit, I had the opportunity to attend a meeting with the Sylvania Exchange Club. And this is a service organization within the community that was established, I want to say back in like 1937 or 1927 in the Toledo area. And it is a service organization. It was my privilege and honor to be invited to learn more about the organization and how they support service projects throughout the area, as well as provide scholarships for students. So from my understanding, the organization was in place for many years and kind of fell off the radar, so they're working to revitalize this particular organization. They need about 15 to 20 members to actually start up again, and so they are out recruiting different folks in the area to be a part of the organization. Also, last week it was my pleasure, along with the Board of Education, to celebrate Bus Driver Appreciation Week. I have to tell you, it was great to send over some bundt cakes earlier in the week for the bus drivers. They were so excited. Rumor has it one person forgot to clock in because they were so excited about receiving the bundt cakes, and others were excited about having the choice of what flavor they would get. So that was pretty nice. And also, we provided pizza for our bus drivers. I believe that was Thursday of last week. We provided pizza. Thanks for Romeo's on Sylvania Avenue for giving it a discounted price so we could recognize our bus drivers. It was piping hot when I took it out of the car, so it wasn't cold pizza, it was hot pizza. And I have to tell you, we started at 1 o'clock, and I was in a meeting back with Deb Nish, the interim director of transportation. By 2 o'clock, she was absolutely correct. The pizza was gone. Absolutely all gone. So I just am so glad that on behalf of our Board of Education and our educators and our administration and our community that we can show our bus drivers how important that they are, recognizing that sometimes they are the very first face they see of our schools in the morning and the last face they see as well in the afternoon. I would like to share that on Wednesday I will participate in the Sylvania Chamber Luncheon. I will be a guest among a panel of local female leaders in recognition and honor of March being Women's History Month. So there are several female leaders in the area that will serve on a panel during the luncheon. So if you care to join us, we will take a guess on what type of chicken we will have. It's always something chicken for lunch. We take a guess on that sometimes. And but it's my honor and privilege to represent Sylvania schools in that capacity. Also, a brief COVID update. Absences at this point in time seem to be more typical for what we would have been in a typical school year at this time of the year. So it seems that the arrow continues to move in the right direction. And just highlighting some student events, I am so proud of our children in Sylvania schools. The accolades and awards they receive are absolutely endless. This week alone, or last week, our creative writing tournament, we had grand champions at Southview. Division I and Division II took first place, so kudos to those teams. Our Southview Cougarettes, two-time state champions. They won first place in large palm, first place in jazz, and second place in large hip hop. And then we also had the Science Olympiad team regional competition where both high schools and all 3 of our junior high schools placed in the top 3 in their divisions. And not to mention, this weekend we had the Cat's Meow over at Northview High School where one of our very own board members was serenaded by a group of young men on the stage, and I won't say any more because I could tell by her reaction, but we have video. We have video. Oh my gosh, I'm making her blush, but it was so much fun. Honestly, it was a great opportunity. If you don't know about the Cat's Meow, our students actually write the play, performance, skit, whatever you want to call it. It's a little longer than a skit. It's a play. Had a full intermission, but it was fabulous. It's written by our students, performed by our students. We had staff that were also part of the cast, and of course our very own school board member Tammy Lavalette. So those are just a few highlights, and I'm happy to share those with those here tonight and those who may be watching at a later time.
Great, thank you. Now, commendations.
Yes, I recommend for item 3.1 that we congratulate the 3 students from Northview who actually scored a 26 or higher on the ACT, and they took that test assessment back in December. So congratulations to those students for a job well done. They showed what they know, and they did it well.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Ms. Huffman.
Yes.
Mrs. Conklin.
Yes.
Mrs. Lavalette.
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Feller.
Yes.
Next, we have a presentation from our very own Laura Lowe, who is the Director of Special Education here in Sylvania Schools. I asked Laura to join us this afternoon to share some of the changes that have taken place in regards to how we provide instruction to our youngest Sylvanians, and she's here to highlight where we are, well really where we've been, where we are, and where we will be going in regards to providing services for our students in our preschool. So with that, Laura, thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Motley. Is this on? All right. Okay, so as Dr. Motley said, the purpose of why I'm here this evening is basically on the surface to provide updates to the board and to the community on rule changes that have been implemented in the state of Ohio that affect preschool that were introduced in July of 2021. But also, I want to put that improvement specialist in me isn't going to rest unless we put that improvement spin on it, and we talk about how these changes really are best for kids and how we can seize this opportunity to take a fresh look at our programming for preschool students and make improvements and adjustments. Okay, so there we go. So I'm going to put my teacher hat on for a moment and kind of set the stage for some background knowledge. When you think of preschool, a preschool embedded within a local school district, a public school district, what do you think of preschool? So just think about that for a second. What is preschool when it's embedded within a public school? One scenario or one comparison I often give, and I created this comparison for myself many years ago, the first year I was ever a preschool director within a public school. It was like this epiphany. Hey, preschool in a public school, it's a school. It's cute kids running around, having fun, learning through engagement, learning through play, learning through interactions, yeah, but it's a school within a school. So underneath our K-12 roof, we have this preschool. And this preschool programming, I put the logo for the 5-star award winner, Step Up to Quality there, because I want to remind our community, like, our preschool is highly rated. That's part of a licensing requirement, and our rated preschool programs they're a 5-star programs. That means it's the highest, best rating we can receive. So we know we have great quality programming. But within that preschool building or under that roof, we're required to follow all applicable K-12 requirements. Learning standards, licensure, all those types of things, right? But we also have layers of requirement that impacts just preschool. So on the right-hand side of your screen, you have 3 circles. That kind of reminds us that schools have rules, right? Whether you're no running in the hallway or take your hat off, or we have these operating rules as well, right? So in preschool, one of the universal rules that we have to follow, just like K-12, for students with disabilities, for example, or Ohio's operating standards for students with disabilities. So that follows IDEA, right, federally, and it trickles down to state. But 2 areas of rule that we're required to follow, specific to preschool, is preschool licensing rule. You have the Ohio Revised Code there. And you have the preschool special education rule, which supplements and runs in tandem with the operating standards. And I want to give everyone this background knowledge so we can kind of put some of the recommendations that we'll have to do going forward into context, okay? So we're not going to focus a whole lot on the licensing rule today, and I'll talk about that in a moment. We are going to focus primarily on the preschool special education rule. But with both of those, before I go on to the next slide, I want you to note the date that these rules were revised and released in Ohio this year, well, last year, July 1st, 2021. So as we all know, the school year, really, we ramp up far before July 1st, right? Like we're doing staffing in March, we're doing hiring all summer, we're the school year, I feel like as an administrator, we're already into next school year, and it's February, right? So that is important when we take a look at some of the changes that we'll be talking about. Okay, so as I said, we're going to focus on the preschool special education rule change. At a minimum, if we ask the questions, why do we even need preschool, right? If all we cared about as a district was what's our minimum requirement, what are the minimum boxes we need to check to be legal and get on with life within educating children. Preschool is not compulsory, right? We're not required to provide public preschool, but we are required to provide child fine. And I want to read this for a moment so we all have a foundational understanding of what is child fine and why we have to follow this rule for preschool, okay? So all children with disabilities residing in Ohio between the ages of 3, preschool, okay, and 21, have available to them a free and appropriate education, so that's FAPE, as provided by Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Act, IDEA. So we have a federal requirement that's reinforced at our state. But I think in Sylvania, we're better than just like compliance. We're better than what's our minimum requirement to get through the day, right? So that's why I wanted to include what has recently been released from the Ohio Department of Education. What is Ohio's vision for preschool special education? Remember, preschool special education is the whole reason we have to have preschool. But how can our programming, our high-quality 5-star programming, continue to reflect this statement? Each child with a disability is challenged, prepared, and empowered for their future by having access to an inclusive, high-quality early childhood program where each child is provided individualized and appropriate support and meeting high expectations. So at a minimum, we have child find. At a maximum, we do this. I think not just for our students with disabilities, but all of our Sylvania students. That's what we're shooting for. Okay, so what we're going to do over the next little bit of time is go over primarily the preschool special education rule. You have these references here if you'd like to. I know we have some lawyers on the board here. If you'd like to dig into pages and pages of code, it's there for you. I won't bore you with that right now. This slide represents the 3 big buckets of the preschool special education rule change that are forward-facing, okay? Obviously, there are many clarifications and so on and so forth, but these are the 3 areas that were released in July that our program and our district most closely related to as impacting kind of that public-facing, how we service kids every day and how we're improving outcomes for students. So the rule change clarified continuum requirements, and we'll talk in a moment about what that means. Highlights the importance of least restrictive environment. Again, we'll talk about that more specifically. And the reduction and then clarifying teacher-student ratio to align more specifically with student needs. One thing, this is where special education sometimes gets cloudy, is that we talk about these 3 buckets as 3 separate areas of the rule change, and they are, but they also are enmeshed. They're separate, yet they're together. We can't talk about continuum, and I have a visual I'll share with you in a moment, without talking about what is a child's least restrictive environment. What's the most appropriate placement for that child, okay? So this is a model of Ohio's preschool continuum of services. So again, 2 of our terms from the previous slide, least restrictive environment, continuum of services, 2 separate terms, but they're enmeshed. It is a school district's legal, if we're talking about compliance, it's our legal responsibility to provide a continuum of services for preschool students with disabilities. That's what we're talking about specifically now. The law says that we start a team, an IEP team starts at the least restrictive placement, that's the top bar there, a regular early childhood education setting with natural proportions. And we talk about the child's needs, their strengths, their goals. Where on this continuum can that be met by bringing services to that child? So what the rule change clarified is that Ohio, not just Sylvania, but Ohio as a state overall, needed to do a better job with providing a wider continuum of services, of available placements, as opposed to saying, well, we have some preschool programs in our district, or we have a teacher that can come to your home once, for 4 hours a month to help to work with your child. We had to do a better job of being more specific about our continuum options. Okay? Moving beyond that compliant aspect of this visual, though, is one thing I really wanted to draw a point to, is that we know the law says a district has to have service or a continuum available. It doesn't mean that we have to have all of these classrooms in our district, but what we know, like I said earlier, is that children learn through play, children learn through engagement, children learn through being in a play-based setting where they have access to their peers, they have access to other children that they can learn through. That's what preschool is all about. So can we send a speech and language pathologist to a child's home to provide 4 hours of speech therapy a month? Sure. But is that home? Why does a child in preschool receive speech therapy? It's to access the curriculum, to access preschool. So that home doesn't have peers to learn from. It doesn't have engagement in a natural educational setting. It doesn't have a lot of the components that we can provide in the community programs or in our own classrooms. So the continuum's not new. The continuum has existed ever since IDEA was invented, right, in 1970, whatever, 5, I believe it was. But this rule change for preschool special education clarifies what that looks like. This is straight up data. This is like our cliffhanger for now what, right? This is data that paints a 5-year picture of what our enrollment in preschool has looked like, specifically for students with disabilities. That's our child find requirement, that's what we're focusing on. You can note there's an upward trajectory, with the exception of 2021, right? Because that was a year of COVID, and I don't think, the preschool planning, much like school age planning, there's soft targets. We don't always know. I can't tell you, I can't sit here and look at you in the eye and tell you, I know we will have exactly 109 students enrolled next year. I don't know that. People can move in, people move out, there's referrals. But we have to look at the story that the data paints and make educated assumptions based on that. So when I look at this, I see increased need, I see growth as expected. Knowing what we know about our society needs, our community needs, it mirrors that, reflects that. Our students in our community, much like our students in our society, have increased need and growth is expected. Growth being that we need to continue to provide additional services to kids. But here's where I get concerned, but yet optimistic, because I feel like we're able to grasp this opportunity of the rule change of July to meet the increased needs and growth of our district and our community. When we think about our capacity in Sylvania schools, I kind of came up, my brain's contextual and it's kind of nerdy, but I like to have these contextual reminders to help us kind of put this into real life. If we take a look at our programming right now, we have a total in-house, so that school building, our physical seats in our physical Sylvania school buildings, 76 seats, 76 little chairs for little bottoms for little Sylvania community children. We have 28 seats in our community. So these are children that are itinerant teachers or speech and language pathologists. They're going into like a child's home, very restrictive, right? Remember that continuum? Or a private daycare provider. That's at the top. That's awesome. That's where that's where the law right now says we need to meet kids out before they come in, right? But if you look at the other, to serve potential enrollment, like 104 is our estimated top enrollment for next year. I think it's probably low. And it also means we're not going to start August 15th with 104 preschoolers with disabilities. It grows throughout the year. I think this year we've had very close to probably 75 to 80 by the end of the year initial evaluations. So on average, that's about what we're evaluating annually. Okay? So if you do the math, where you land is the fact that we don't have enough seats for what our capacity is currently. So we have challenges. Some of this is a result, regardless of the rule change that was released in July, of just our natural increased need and growth in our district and lack of facilities, right? We did hire an additional teacher this year. That was been awesome. That has kind of our saving grace. So I thank anyone here that had a role in that. But with the rule change, we have a reduction in class size that doesn't reduce our responsibilities. So we will, going into planning for next year, for our physical classrooms, we are required to reduce the amount of students with disabilities that we have in each class, which isn't a bad thing, because that means we have a lower ratio and teachers can give more specialized attention to students. So that's not a bad thing. It just prevents an opportunity to find more seats for more little children, right? We looked at our increased enrollment. Those seats aren't going to come from our classrooms in our building. We're using every single seat. So we're looking at additional, our current, and that kind of ties up with our fourth bullet here. Our current staffing model isn't sustainable to meet compliance requirements. So we know that we have to take some action, right? Create a staffing plan to reflect projected enrollment. We'd have to do that whether the law changed or not. Every year we look at how many kids are enrolling, do we have the staff, do we need to hire? An added layer to this, though, with the rule change, I think this was on a previous slide, is that if you think about K-12, special education, or a teacher might have 2 licenses. And that in our preschool, that's what we have. We have preschool teachers and their license as gen ed teachers, and that same preschool teacher did a lot of hard work, and they have a dual license. They're a special education teacher and they have a general education teacher license. The rule clarification doesn't allow that one teacher to work under both licenses, so we have to pick. They have to pick. Am I going to be a gen ed teacher or am I going to be a special ed teacher? That's no different than K-12. We have this, it's models that. So it really isn't a bad thing. It just requires us to adjust our staffing and hire more staff. We will evaluate and increase our continuum options within the district. So what that looks like is partnering with community programs. Again, it's the top part of the continuum. That's where the law wants us to start anyhow. And just building those relationships within the community. It allows us, with the new rule change, it clarifies the types of classrooms that the state recognizes, so we can have co-taught classrooms, we can have classrooms with a head teacher that's a gen ed teacher and they're serviced by a special education teacher. There's a lot of opportunities there, right? And then evaluate facilities to reflect early childhood service delivery success going forward. So that'll be part of our strategic planning going forward. I included the scale there, and I stole this from kind of a concept that I've done many times over the years when we talk about why we do what we do in special education. And so it was a visual because we, like I said earlier, we can look at this as an opportunity to be compliant and we want to follow the law. But how can being compliant actually improve outcomes for kids? And it's balanced, right? We can follow the law, but we can see the why behind it, and we can use that to balance out best practice. So yes, compliance is important, but it's also important to balance that with doing what's right for kids. So, and then in your presentation, because we know in the world of education, we like to have acronyms and assume that everyone always knows what we're talking about, I included a glossary so you can kind of access some of those terms. So, thank you for your time. Thank you.
I appreciate your thoroughness, Laura. There are a lot of changes that are taking place in our preschool and in preschool across Ohio, and really what it sounds like is our preschool programs and how we deliver services are now going to replicate what we see in K-12 education. So they're following some best practice and research-based strategies in how we provide education to the youngest folks in Ohio, starting at age 3. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're at our first opportunity for public participation for agenda items.
I was waving at her.
Oh, would you like the public participation?
No.
All right, seeing none. What's next? We're at the treasurer, Jeff.
All right, let me pass these around, if I could, please.
So 5 minutes.
Sometimes a little easier to see a handout. I did not email you this ahead of time. President Feller, I'd like to present to you items 6.1 through 6.3, eventually in a consent agenda. Obviously 6.1 are minutes. 6.2 is the treasurer's report. It's at this level I'd like to talk about the handout and actually kind of prepare all of us of the different formats of trying to understand our financial position, just a different way to look at something we like to believe is much more understandable. So when you look at this general fund report, and it's going to coincide with eventually the 5-year forecast that we will have to present in May. And the state, and as just was mentioned, sometimes the acronyms and unrestricted grants and aid and property tax allocation doesn't necessarily mean a lot. So if you look at this first page, the general fund report, revenues, we all know what real estate taxes are. We all know what interest income is and state funding. And then you probably know a little bit about rollback and homestead. So what we're doing here is taking the same data. And so in the very first column, that is our budget. If you were to pull up our forecast that was submitted in November, we had a budgeted there of $96 million, and then you see that down below was our total expenses. What we're really just doing is breaking this out, and we like to say in a more, we call it, as Cage and I, we kind of call it a more community-friendly forecast. The reality is, Adam and I and Cage, we'll understand those terms from the state, but we don't always feel the boards, and especially if we're maybe presenting at our Kiwanis or Rotary or chamber meetings, we like to have things that the community can understand our finances. It's hard enough. So all this is just breaking out data into a different way that's a little more explainable. And so in the middle column is where we are through 7 months. It's our current in black there is where we are. And then, of course, right next to it is where we were a year ago. So we're always, I would always, if you're not really a person that loves every line of detail, which I know a lot of people aren't into every little line, but you do want to look at the total revenue and total expenses, it definitely as a percentage, and see where we're headed. This next month is when we'll take maybe a little more, maybe a slide presentation, because we should have our final real estate settlement, okay? Hopefully everybody, Lucas County, we paid our taxes, we've got most of it collected, we probably won't settle till March. Why is that? So I won't be able to wait till a board meeting. I'll email you that out just because I just live for this. So that document, I know my wife makes fun of me for that stuff, nerdy financial stuff. But you need to understand, or I want you to understand, if you look at that top line, real estate taxes is $63 million out of our 96. We are going to know in a week or two what we're going to come in for the year. There isn't no more guessing. It's an estimate. The real estate, and in fact, on the forecast that you approved last November, it called for a $3 million increase, projected increase in our real estate. We're going to know in 2 weeks. Maybe it's 3 million, maybe it's 3.5 million, maybe, hopefully it's not 2 million. We want it to be what we forecasted, but you don't always know if people have to pay their taxes, not just what's assessed. But once we know that, we already know our state funding. If you remember from last month, we went over that. So we're going to know our biggest components. We're going to know in 2 weeks. We're going to know financially how we're going to end the year. We won't have to wait till June. Again, that's the advantage of a school system. We get our again, we're not a school that gets a lot of state funding, so we're going to know how our local funding makes up such a large percentage of our revenue. And we already know, like I say, the state now is no longer a mystery. And so next month, it's going to be an exciting, hopefully, that's why I say I'll email you probably during the week when we actually get it, because I want to tell you, hey, here's what the final number came in, because you don't get any more. Once the auditor cuts it off, and let's say Ms. Huffman didn't pay her taxes, but she paid it in April. She happens to be next to me. No.
I paid my taxes.
Yeah. Even if she paid her taxes in April, Lucas County would hold that money and not give it to us until July. They don't like, as people pay and trickle in, the school gets one final settlement, they cut it off, and then they charge her interest and all that other stuff she'll have to deal with if she wouldn't pay. But the school only gets it, so every collection, when they cut it off, we're always getting delinquencies from the prior period. That's part of the business cycle. Sometimes companies are in distress and they don't pay their tax, but in every part of every two semi-annual collection, you're collecting delinquencies. We've always done that. That's nothing new. So that's why it's pretty consistent. And one last fun fact: generally, some people are a little more blessed that when they get that tax bill in January, they pay it all. And whereas me, I'm going to pay the other half in July. And so the collection isn't always 50-50. It's usually 55-45, because some people, and maybe you're retired, you just want to pay that bill, get it out of you pay your taxes. Some people are like that. And so our collection in January is always the highest. It's not 50-50, because just so you know, that people do actually write the whole check for the whole year. So we'll look at that. That's probably very consistent here as well. So our expenses, so you see our overall revenue, and like I say, we'll take a little more time next month to break that down once we have our real estate number locked in. The expenses, again, it's just such an anomaly year because our purchase services are way, way down, if you remember, because the new state funding formula, we no longer get charged for kids leaving. It's netted through revenue, and next year we'll all be in sync, but right, it's going to be a little crazy for all of us, all the schools out there, because it looks like our expenses are down, but it's really being netted from the revenue. And so, yes, our expenses are only up 1.25%. That's a little artificial. That our expenses are a little higher than that if you were truly comparing apples to apples. But because of the purchase service line being down 1.6 million, that alone is helping to offset our expenses. But it's all good because we're having a good year. If the revenue comes in, it's going to be potentially a great year. So to go along and going forward. So that's, again, want to get you accustomed to just looking at this financial statement a little bit. Hopefully you'll find it a little more easier to understand, and certainly please ask questions. And we'll take just a little time each month. Adam has already been in, as I think I pointed out, so he's going to take this ball and blow it through the roof, because he already gets all of this stuff already. So we're just trying to get it all ready, and like I said, if he's walking into a very, very good financial situation, it would appear. Like I say, we'll cross our fingers till next, in a couple weeks here. The second page is just, again, another report that spits out of our software now. But both these reports we can run on demand. It's really pretty cool that we can get an update, and this can be emailed out to anyone. This is our food service. And again, why this is such a big deal to me is because we've always had to transfer money out of our general fund, as I've learned. And then you can see there's a transfer in line, which means when our food service operation doesn't support itself on its own, and this is very common in schools, but the federal government, as you I think know, every school lunch by a student and breakfast is free. So whether you can afford it or whether, no matter what your income is, every kid is free. And so what that translate there on the federal reimbursement, we're brought up to $1.8 million, and look at what it was a year ago. And so this is the year we're going to make money in food service, and it's the whole, you thank the U.S. government. How long that's going to continue will be a challenge for the next food service director, and do we have the next food service director? Okay, yeah, we do.
That's right.
Oh, it is Ray?
Ray.
Okay, I thought so, but I didn't know if we were gonna be somebody announced down the road.
No,
Okay.
he's keeping
Perfect.
that role, and because he has the expertise.
Because he has that
and-
expertise
yeah,
anyway,
and
so
experience.
he's
So-
great to work with, so that's awesome. So yeah, he's real excited. I've been emailing me these reports. So again, what that means to us, and he's gonna be happy with food service, is that we're not gonna have a year-end expense to have to subsidize our food service this year. And maybe this rolls, and again, if the government extends it again, because we really didn't see it coming a year ago, because all the payment protection programs were kind of coming to an end. All of a sudden they said, no, we're going to give every kid a free lunch again and breakfast, no matter what their income is. It's a win for the schools financially. I mean, you might agree or disagree with that policy, but I'm just telling you that from a treasurer standpoint, we'll take it. So it's a good thing, and you can see the difference in our food service balance. So again, that's just another. The food service is a business operation. Case again, I know Ms. Johnson's new, is those employees who work in the food service are paid out of the food service fund. So that's how, and the food service director, and all, those things are all charged, let alone the food expenses are charged. So it's a separate fund, and if there's enough business, so to speak, and we charge a fair price in a normal year, you try to break even, so you don't have to subsidize. And then the government helps you with commodities and other things. So your goal is to try and break even, and it's hard sometimes. But this year is not as challenging. So, any questions on the treasurer report? President Feller then available to fund. So at this time, I guess I would, or do I ask for the motion, or do you guys?
Either one. Both.
Okay. I'd ask for a motion to approve item 6.4, which is a consent, items 6.1 through 6.3 in the treasurer's report.
I would like to point out that Kim wasn't here for one of these meetings, so can we separate out the February 14th meeting? That special meeting, Kim wasn't here.
Yeah. Should we pull out all
We
the
need to-
meetings?
Well, we can.
And just approve those
I suppose,
individually?
could we just pull out
Just 6.1?
Well, just pull out that one and then make it 6.4 and then drop, I mean, I don't know, how do we do it so we can
So-
get it approved?
We can make a motion just for item 6.1, and I don't know how we've done it, Dr. Motley.
I think make a motion for item 6.1 and then pull, with the exception, and pull that particular meeting out.
Okay.
And then we can approve that meeting next month with the appropriate adjustment with Kim not being there, correct?
Okay.
Okay, so you want me to say, I move for approval on a consent agenda basis, items 6.1 through 6.3 as amended with
Correct.
21422 being pulled out.
Correct. And then we'll approve it next month.
Okay.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Ms. Huffman?
Yes.
Mr. Feller?
Yes.
Mrs. Conklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavalette?
Yes.
And Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Thank
Jeff,
you.
I just want to say thank you for that report. That's
Yeah.
makes things very clear. It's good.
Yes.
Oh, good.
So
Thank you.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Motley, Superintendent, we're with you.
Alrighty, well, it is my absolute pleasure this afternoon, evening, I guess it's after 6, so it's evening, to recommend the appointment of Susie Felver as principal of McCord Junior High. That's my recommendation, and I'll have some comments after we move through that particular item.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
So if I may share, Susie is here tonight, and after a thorough interview process, she quickly rose to the top of our candidate pool. Just to tell you a little bit about what makes Susie the perfect fit for McCord, not only has she spent the last 7 years serving our McCord students and families, she actually started as an English teacher in Sandusky schools 18 years ago. You don't look that old, just saying. Susie actually left Sandusky and joined us. I think she was a teacher, then the AD for Sandusky City Schools. Then she joined us here at Southview as athletic director as well. And then from the Southview AD position, she ended up as the assistant principal at McCord Junior High. So she is, although she started in Sandusky, she is deeply embedded into our Sylvania schools, not only as an educator, but also as a resident. And we're just pleased to promote her to this position with the board's approval. I think she's a dynamic fit, and we look forward to working with you, Susie, as the new principal of McCord.
All right, any more discussion? Call the roll.
Ms. Huffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavalette?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Conklin?
Yes.
Mr. Feller?
Yes.
Susie, if you have any words?
I just want to say thank you. I truly believe McCord is a fabulous place. I absolutely love it. 7 years is hard to believe that we've got some guests here who were like sixth graders when I started there, but I really am passionate about Sylvania schools. I adore McCord. I feel like I'm ready to kind of follow Josh's lead and fill his shoes as fast as I can. And hopefully we can find a good teammate over the course of the next few months and continue steering the ship in the right direction. So, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I recommend item 7.2, a consultant contract for Ms. Jane Spurgeon. We would like to enter into this agreement in order to provide additional support for our human capital department to make sure we continue with our positive momentum. We're estimating about an hour a week in order for Jane to provide support to Josh and the entire department. As you know, she has been serving as interim. Prior to being interim, Jane has done a lot of different jobs for Sylvania schools, but she brings her expertise to the table that I think will be a benefit for both Josh and the district.
Good.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, call the roll.
Ms. Huffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Conklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavalette?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Feller?
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 7.3, an administrative resignation. Mr. Bob Verhelst submitted his resignation, I should say retirement, not resignation, retirement. I need to change that, Jeff, on the agenda, if you could please. That should say retirement and not resignation. He has served with Sylvania Schools 14 years as Director of Student Services. Ironically, I don't know if many of you are aware, he's been in education for 40 years. He has had 34 years of public education, 6 years in private schools, and again, 14 years in our Sylvania schools. So we wish him well. This is well-deserving after 40 years. Well-deserved to, I guess, go on to the next part of his life's journey. So congratulations, bittersweet, but we know that he has really given his best to our families and our students.
Do we have a motion?
Second.
No, we need a motion.
I'll motion.
There you go.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All right, call the roll.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavalette?
Yes.
Mrs. Conklin?
Yes.
Ms. Huffman?
Yes.
Mr. Feller?
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 7.4. It is an affiliation agreement with the University of Toledo. This is an annual agreement with the College of Education that allows the University of Toledo to place their student teachers and pre-service teachers in our classrooms across the district.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Discussion? All right, call the roll.
Mrs. Conklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavalette?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Huffman?
Yes.
Mr. Feller?
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 7.5, a College Credit Plus agreement with Lourdes University. This again is an annual item.
I'll move approval.
I'll second. Any discussion?
Is this the price staying pretty, it's the same, it hasn't gone up?
Very similar, yeah, I don't think it's moved at all, to be honest with you.
Okay. That's all.
All right, call the roll.
Mrs. Lavalette?
Yes.
Mr. Feller?
Yes.
Ms. Huffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Conklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 7.6 for approval. This item is specifically for an agreement for roofing improvements for Arbor Hills Junior High and Timberstone Junior High with Mason Roofing Company. This This roofing project, or both roofing projects, will cost the district about $467,000 and some change there, of course.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
All right. And just to point out, that's well under the
Yes.
original estimate, so that's
Yes,
good.
under about $235,000 less than it came in under budget, what we originally thought.
How old is Timberstone? It just seems new. Pretty new
97,
to
Yeah,
me.
about 97.
so 25.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is
Time
Southview's
flies when
roof
you're
still
having fun.
needed?
Sorry.
Do we still need work on Southview's roof also, or am I?
That's a good question, and we
imagining
will talk about that. I know that Ray is continuing to work with the company to come in and do an assessment of all of our facilities so that we can really implement a preventative maintenance plan. I do know that he has been on all the roofs in the district, and I know Timberstone has had some challenges, if I understand. I think this is the second time, maybe third time that this roof has had some needs. But we are going to be discussing that in a facilities meeting where we're looking at our buildings and also having the assessment.
Maybe I'm just recalling incorrectly, but I thought there had been discussion about Southview needing roofing work at a previous facilities meeting. Greg, am I remembering that wrong?
And I don't remember that.
I know Stranahan needed some roofing a while back. Did that continue? Do you know if they got
I think
done?
that got done.
Yeah, I think so. Whiteford's the one I remember.
Oh, Whiteford, that's what I was
Whiteford, I
thinking.
know
Whiteford,
Whiteford
not
was taken
Stranahan,
care of
Whiteford.
in
Yeah.
2020.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion? All right, call the roll.
Ms. Huffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavalette?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Conklin?
Yes.
And Mr. Feller?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to our human resources for our licensed staff. On a consent agenda basis, I recommend items 1.1 through 1.5 be approved.
8.1.
8.1. I said I wasn't going to mess up tonight, and I messed up, and I'm really trying not to. I'm going to blame my glasses. Items 8.1 through 8.5 under a consent agenda basis. Item 8.1, more substitute teachers for Sylvania schools. They're rolling out now, and we are thrilled to have these young ladies and gentlemen join our team. Item 8.2, we have a number of licensed retirements. Barbara Beverly has been with Sylvania Schools for 29 years of service. She is currently an English teacher at Southview. We wish her the best. Again, it's a milestone for her, a loss for us, but I'm sure she'll appreciate the time that she has to herself now. We have Arlene Hatcher, who currently is fourth grade at Sylvan Elementary, 25 years of service to the Sylvania schools. Congratulations, Arlene. We have Catherine Holt, who is a Spanish teacher at McCord in Northview, 35 years in education. Kudos to her. Again, well-deserved her time to retire. We have Julie Luther, a special ed speech path at Central Trail and Timberstone after 16 years here in Sylvania Schools. And last but obviously not least, Jane Nagel, who is a special ed preschool teacher at Whiteford. She has 21 years of service with Sylvania Schools. We certainly congratulate these ladies on their retirement, and we wish them the best. We also have item 8.3, where we have a license resignation. Item 8.4 is recommended approval for a license unpaid leave. 8.5, you'll see a list of individuals that are for extra duty pay. Many of the extra duty pay recommendations are intervention plans, building-based plans where our teachers will be working with our students for intervention or PBIS, supporting our students in a choir, concert, and contest, professional development, and etc. And we also recommend those, and there are several pages of those. It should be noted that the intervention supports are being paid from ESSER funds, because a lot of this work is as a result of loss of instruction, and we're trying to close that academic gap.
I'll move approval on a consent agenda basis items 8.1 through 8.5.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
No, thank you to those retiring. That's like, what, 125 years of service?
Combined, right?
Combined,
Throw
that's-
Bob on top of it. Oh my gosh.
Senora Holt. Sad.
No, Arlene Hatcher, sad. Just seeing those names.
All right, call the roll.
Ms. Huffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavalette?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Conklin?
Yes.
Mr. Feller?
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend items 9.1 through 9.6 on a consent agenda basis. Item 9.1, we have a number of new hires for district substitutes. You'll see paraprofessionals and custodians listed. Item 9.2 is a number of classified changes. As noted in our last meeting, we have recognized how we needed to work to memorialize a couple of different things with our bus routes. And thank you to Jeff and Cajun for helping us do this in a way that payroll would be able to memorialize how folks are getting paid. So what you will notice is a number of these bus drivers will have a decrease or increase in time for their different routes. So when you're not so much approving the route per se, but the time increase or decrease. In addition, you will also see some transfers of individuals who are going from one position to another position, from a paraprofessional lunchroom aide to maybe a transportation aide. So those have now been cleared up. We have a whole process in place, a new system, so that payroll has the right information they need, as well as getting the board's approval respectfully. Item 9.3, we have two individuals who will also be retiring, Catherine Boland and also Karen Rieger. Catherine has 17 years of service as an attendance secretary, and Karen Rieger is a special education para. She has 21 years of service, so more retirements here in Sylvania schools. We wish them well and congratulations. Item 9.4, we have one resignation. Item 9.5, we have some supplemental positions for our athletics. And 9.6, you'll see one individual who has resigned her supplemental position for girls lacrosse assistant coach. Again, I recommend the approval of items 9.1 through 9.6 on a consent agenda basis.
I'll move approval on a consent agenda basis, items 9.1 through 9.6.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, call the roll.
Ms. Huffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Conklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavalette?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Feller?
Yes. And now we are at board committee reports. I'll start over there. Tammy?
I don't have anything.
Jill? Julie?
Yeah, I actually got to judge the Just Right. I was a judge at Just Right this last Saturday, which I was a little scared to do because they had me reading poetry, and I was like, is this Cat in the Hat? Wasn't. It was great. Those kids are so talented, so that was great. Sylvania Prevention Alliance, successful hot cocoa run. I left the last meeting early to get to.
Cold hot cocoa run.
Was it cold? You didn't do it.
I did
so
not.
Sign up. Foundation, Kim and I were there last week. You're gonna have to fill it in for me here. We're looking to do a board retreat with the board and work on reviewing the bylaws and sort of a reset now that Lauren Boer's come on to help us. There's
Looking at the logo.
the logo, just sort of a whole reset.
And she's
some-
launching a new website.
launching a new website, and then there's some fundraisers coming up, some fun events for families, for over 20, so lots of stuff going on there.
Good. Kim, anything else?
Nope, just the foundation.
Okay. And I don't really have a whole lot. We've had a Sylvania Rec and Sage Yard meeting since our last meeting. Nothing really has come up new. Just a couple of new board members that are getting acclimated.
Greg, who else was appointed?
What's that?
Who else was appointed?
Who else was appointed for the
Oh,
city?
geez, you put me on the spot. For Sage Yard? Sean Murphy,
By the city?
yes, by the city. Mary Westfall took Katie's seat for the city as the elected rep. Obviously, we appointed Susie. I think that's it.
Thanks.
So we are at the second opportunity for public participation for non-agenda items, and seeing none, I will move that we go into executive session for employment of a public official.
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Yes. Whatever you want to do.
Mr. Feller?
Yes.
Ms. Huffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Conklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavalette?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
And there will be no action taken after the executive session.
Keep that up.